There were leaks when he decided he didn't trust President Trump. We've had an acting AG fired. We've had the director of the FBI fired. And we can't manage to find prosecutors who haven't donated to presidential candidates. Out of all the universe of prosecutors that you used to work with, and I used to work with, and Johnny Ratcliffe used to work with, we can't find a dozen that haven't donated to major political candidates. And now we have speculation struck. It was the Inspector General, not the Department of Justice, not the Bureau of Justice. It was the Inspector General.
And I got what you feel, but you gotta realize how real I am. You ain't worry about me when you ain't here.
But it shouldn't have been the Inspector General that had to bring this to our attention 12 months after.
You ain't gotta worry about me when you ain't here.
That same agent is the one
I'm gonna beat you. You saw how I handled that with that dope, with that knife.
You and I have
the average person wouldn't handle that like that. The average person would been scared.
Witnesses and potential targets sit in on a witness interview.
That was too dirty. Whoever did that. That was too dirty.
And your unwillingness to want to say how unprecedented that is. So I'm not going to ask you. I'll just tell you.
Because I've been all of them before.
And that same agent is alleged to have been the one that changed the language.
And they got to come in here to get
You're right, they are synonyms. Extremely careless is a synonym for grossly negligent, which begs the question, why change it? But you and I know why it was changed. It was changed because the statute says grossly negligent. And if you're not going to charge someone, God knows you don't want to track the statute with the language that you use. That would be stupid. What's also stupid is to do that memo 2 months before you've interviewed the target.
No.
That memo was drafted before the last witness was interviewed. Director, it was drafted before the target of the investigation was even interviewed. Which makes people wonder, was the decision made before the interviews were finished? And now we believe that that same agent is also involved in the investigation into President Trump and his campaign. It may have interviewed Michael Flynn. That hasn't been confirmed, and we don't know what role, if any, he took in the preparation of documents for court filing. So I'm going to say this because I'm out of time, and I appreciate the chairman's patience with me. You have a really important job. When all else fails in this country, we want to be able to look to the FBI. We want to be able to look to the Department of Justice. All the other institutions we trust, including Congress, appear to be broken. We want to be able to look to you. It's been a really bad 2 years. I am counting on you to help answer our questions in Congress, our fellow citizens' questions, but I am more than anything counting on you to go back to work for that blindfolded woman holding a set of scales that really doesn't give a whit about politics. That's the FBI that I want.
The gentleman has expired. The director is going to respond. Just a 30-second response. First, let me say, Congressman Gowdy, I'm well aware of your longstanding support for the Bureau and the Department, and I want you to know we appreciate it. And second, I want to assure you and every other member of this committee that there is no scenario under which I would have taken the President's nomination if I were not committed to the kind of independent, impartial, objective, and professional pursuit of the facts. I wouldn't be here if I weren't committed to that. And I can give this committee that commitment.
Even in the smallest of courtrooms where there are nothing but empty seats and no television cameras. Somewhere today, those selected to sit in judgment of their fellow citizens will be told that they must wait until the very last witness testifies and the last piece of evidence has been introduced before they can even begin to deliberate on an outcome. So if our fellow citizens should be impartial and free of bias, and if our fellow citizens must wait until the last piece of evidence is introduced, the last witness is called, before they can reach a verdict, a conclusion, an outcome, then I don't think it's asking too much that the Department of Justice and the FBI do the same thing. There is no member of Congress who holds the Department and the Bureau in higher esteem than I do. There are others who hold you in high esteem, but I would take second place to no one, and I have defended the department.
As a judge for 22 years during that investigation, at least in this setting. But I think what I can tell you, which might be helpful in response, is that we have very well established criteria and policies and procedures for questions of victim notification in cyber matters. And the questions, and I probably can't repeat them to you verbatim, but I can give you the gist of them. The questions go to things like, number one, can we identify the victim? Which in a lot of cases is harder than you might think. Number two, is the information that we have at that point in the investigation actionable for the victim? Is there something they can do with it? Could sharing the information actually protect somebody, prevent a loss, etc.? We also look at whether or not sharing the information at the time in question would potentially compromise or jeopardize an existing investigation or reveal sources and methods, which is often the case in these kinds of investigations. And the last point I guess I would make is that when you have a large number of people, it's much easier for us to provide victim notification when we have official or government or corporate accounts where we can contact the Chief Information Security Officer and then they can communicate to all the people who are on that server. When you talk about Gmail accounts and things like that, it gets a lot harder because a lot of people's Gmail addresses don't have, Ray, C-W-R-A-Y or,
Right, but for example, and I assume if what you're describing is the current practice, when the Democratic National Committee was hacked by the Russians, the FBI contacted an intern. They never contacted the chairman of the DNC. She found out, months later. So hopefully those types of procedures have been revised. Do you know that?
I think the procedures themselves remain the same, and the procedures themselves, I think, are pretty sound. The question of, but if you think about what they are questions that the investigators have to ask in each victim notification context.
Let me go. When we had the Attorney General here recently, we asked, there's an ongoing effort to hack into the election system. We know that from various reports. And the Attorney General said really nothing was going on, that he hadn't been able to pay. I'm paraphrasing. He was saying it's really important, we haven't spent enough time on it. I'm getting the sense that that's true across the government. In fact, we've got systems that were hacked within a half an hour at DEFCON by state voting systems. What is the FBI doing relative to preserving the integrity of the voting structure itself for the next election?
Mr. Chairman, may I answer that one? Yes, thank you. Well, I think the FBI is actually very focused on this subject. It's one of the things that I've tried to insist on upon arriving. We have a foreign influence task force that we stood up that brings together both our counterintelligence division, our cyber division, and our criminal division, as well as some other parts of the Bureau. We are in coordination through that task force with DHS, which of course has responsibility for a lot of the election infrastructure, along with states. We are in contact with our foreign partners because, as you know, efforts to interfere with elections are occurring in other countries as well. And so that by doing that with our close relationships with our foreign counterparts, we learn more about tradecraft methods and things like that. So we're acutely focused on looking out for signs of interference in the 2018 or 2020 election cycle.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I know my time is up, but I hope that there's an effort by the Bureau to communicate with state election officers who oftentimes have been kept in the dark, and I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Issa, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Ray, a couple of questions. One is one that I'm sure you're aware of, and I'm just going to ask it as a do you agree? And it's not hypothetical, but it's non-specific. Do you agree that persons should not have their assets forfeited without due process and a provable link to criminal activity?
Well, Congressman, it's been a while since I looked at the law on asset forfeiture, so I want to be careful not to...
This is a constitutional, not a statute.
Well, I believe that in the context of asset forfeiture, we should respect the Constitution.
Okay, so it's fair to say that if somebody has $10,000 in their van, they have it taken from them, and they have to sue to get it back, even though they're never charged with a crime. That would be wrong under due process in the Constitution.
Well, again, I'm not trying to make this difficult, but
got caught with
to me, asset forfeiture
$10,000
questions
found out
raise all
that
kinds of
it's his money,
complicated case law
but
questions
they kept
about
the
due
money,
process, et
so he had to
cetera.
sue the
But I do
FBI to get it
believe
back, and still
due
didn't get it back
process
after he wanted to sue.
and adherence to the Constitution are incredibly important in the asset forfeiture context as in elsewhere.
Thank you, Director. Now, switching to the matter of
Yeah,
Peter Strzok.
read that book.
And I had a long time working with your folks on the personnel side over at Oversight,
That's gangster,
where
man.
we oversee a lot of those things. And I just want to make the record straight now that you're, in addition to being the chief from a law enforcement standpoint, you're also sort of the ultimate head of HR for those tens of thousands of people who are working so hard for us. Is an FBI agent
you already saw
allowed
it. She got it offered like the boy.
Yes.
And
is an
then I got
FBI
another
agent
spot
allowed
where
to communicate that political
it's double
opinion to
XP.
their wife or
So after I
even their
fill the
mistress?
bunker up, it's gonna be
Yes.
2,800,000.
So
Then she gonna have
nothing
more than
in
him.
a text simply
She
communicating
gonna have
a
more than him.
political
And
opinion
look what I
would
said.
be cause
I said,
for firing or
I
any
know it ain't
other
the
action
one
under
that's
the
doing this
ordinary
shit. That's the
rules of
people,
the
but
FBI or any
Creator said,
federal person,
well,
correct?
they gonna be equal.
I think
When you get him back,
question would have to
she
be
already
based on its
straight.
own
So now y'all both gonna be
circumstances.
straight as far as money.
Certainly, I can imagine
So
situations.
you know what that means? That means I'm about to get straight.
Situations where it
Like I
might-
said, that means I'm about to
So
be
that
straight.
brings us to a situation now
Because
in
both my
which an
characters are straight,
individual
and they looking
is
straight,
key
and her hair
to the
straight.
question of whether or not there should be a full de novo review of the FBI's actions
Oh yeah,
as to
like I
Hillary
said,
Clinton
outfit and the
and
color.
the
That's
decision not to
go with her
prosecute
hair
her
and
since he was actively involved in that. So my question to
her
you
skin tone.
is, since it's clear that whatever Peter Strzok did was sufficient to have him relieved, something that in the ordinary course of simply communicating a political opinion would not cause that and would be inappropriate to relieve somebody simply for having a political opinion. Will you make available to the committee,
before I started smoking,
obvious request,
niggas always, yo, man, who took the lighter?
ability to see
I said, oh, nigga, I don't
any
smoke that
or
shit that y'all smoke,
all of those
motherfuckers.
10,000
So I ain't got no
to
lighter.
understand why this
Nigga,
individual
start smoking some
dismissed
weed, you'll know about the
and how
lighter,
it
nigga.
might
I said, I ain't
be
gonna start smoking
relevant
weed, 'cause weed ain't for me
to
to
the
be
question
smoking. That's
of
for
the
y'all to be smoking.
objectivity of Director Comey's investigation and conclusion.
Look at me now.
Well, there's a couple parts to your question, if I might. First, I want to be clear that the individual question has not been dismissed.
He's not been what happened was, but he's been relieved from the duties he had, and he's now in HR, which
He was reassigned away from the special counsel
I'm like
investigation, which is
yourself.
different than
Why did you come
disciplinary
back?
action.
To tell us.
Second,
To tell
as
her
to
that,
the question
to tell her that you done went there and you
access
fucked
to
up,
text
and now you're back to clean up.
We'd be
So
happy
what
to
is he
try to work
doing?
with the
I
committee on
guarantee he
that.
ain't
I
doing
want
much
to
of
be
that.
sensitive to the fact that there is
I said, so what is he
an
doing?
active,
I guarantee he ain't
very
doing much of
active,
nothing.
He telling us
outside independent investigation by the
That's it. You
inspector
tell me-
general. And the last thing I want to do, and
Yeah,
I
he
think the last
probably
thing this
too.
committee would want to do
So
is
they got
somehow
another one on YouTube.
compromise or interfere with that.
They got
So
one on
we'll have to
YouTube.
go
That's
through
what
a
I said.
process to
I said-
assess how we can be sensitive to those
They gonna pull them
operational
people out.
considerations, while
Why?
at the same time
Because they
as we
getting
should
ready to
be
then play that game on us.
responsive to Congress and this committee.
Because they said they had on there where they had said that
of course I yield to
in
Chair.
Mexico,
for yielding.
our government was thinking about,
We very much
just like when we were talking about with Tupac being on the stage,
And we have
they
asked
said
the Department of
I said
Justice.
that'd have been fucked up. Because see, they got the technology, they've been having the technology, so they did that back when they were getting ready to do it. Almost 30 yeah, almost 30 something years ago, but they didn't use the voice.
Relate to any particular.
Now they gonna use the voice.
They gonna use the voice.
Look at him closing your door.
Now,
They crazy.
They crazy.
So what voice supposed to
See,
sound like?
see, that's it. They ain't gonna use me every time. They gonna use a God figure.
Mr. Boyd, a letter indicating that they will make a fulsome response to that request.
I know. I heard.
So I would like following up
It's bullshit.
You know how angry they
Rice's
make?
question that you're
You know how
tell us
angry
that
they
you will
make?
also provide us with
See, like I said again,
honoring of that full
See now,
request because
what they
most of those
doing now
documents
is
that the
setting up
department
their own
has been
demise.
provided
Cause,
coming from,
I'm saying here, one thing about
Bureau of Investigation.
because one thing about the
So
creator,
I
the
don't
creator
mean to
don't get mad.
suggest that we wouldn't be
Why?
fully responsive and cooperative
Like I
and
said,
committed.
how that feeling
I'm
is.
simply saying that
The
we would
creator
work
don't
with
get
the
mad
Justice
because the
Department
creator already
in
know
making
the
sure
creation
that we
gonna
have
get themselves due.
considered all the
They gonna
appropriate
get their
factors that we
issue,
need to
and
make
the
sure that
issue
we're
ain't gonna be
not
something they can
doing
handle.
something on the with
But it's gonna be
unintended
theirs, and it ain't
consequences
gonna be
of
because of
ongoing
the creator that
investigations, but
gave
we
it
have
to
no
them.
desire to
No,
frustrate
what you do
the very
is what's coming
legitimate
back to
oversight
you.
requests of this
Creator
committee.
ain't doing it to you. You're doing it to you yourself.
Thank you. I just want to ask the director,
I'm gonna go sit down.
can this kind or does this kind of document request of the Inspector General on an ongoing investigation, could it
We'll get used to
interfere with
each
that
other 2 more
investigation?
times,
Is it
Brady.
proper to respond fulsomely? I mean,
And again-
what are the limitations here?
Well, I think a lot of that is requires, as the chairman referenced, us to
no,
make
you
sure
won't.
that
You
we
come in to the
are
light.
touching base with the Inspector General, since it's his investigation and not ours. If the Inspector General is comfortable with the information being provided and that it's not going to interfere with or impede his investigation, then that's one very, very significant consideration that can be put to the side. So I can commit that our staff will work with the Justice Department staff and your staff to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to be responsive, while at the same time making sure that we're not in some way jeopardizing or compromising an ongoing investigation or revealing something about a grand jury matter or anything like that.
We asked for it minus grand jury material. Obviously, it takes some time to do that. Mr. Boyd committed to a date of January 15, and he's going to require your cooperation. So we want to have
The cab has been
assurance that
dispatched.
cooperation
It'll be with you soon.
meeting that date will be forthcoming. We intend to follow up with further letters on clarifying this, but it's very important that we have this information very quickly. The Inspector General is completely cooperative with us in his investigation, but they're not his documents. They are the FBI and the Department of Justice documents, so the request is not directed to him, it's directed to the department, and we need to have full response.
We intend to be fully cooperative with both this committee and the Inspector General.
I robbed the gentleman from California of a bit of his time, so I'm going to... I have to say I yield that.
I'll be brief, Mr. Chairman.
Yield it to you, but gentleman's recognized for an additional minute.
Thank you. Director, at this time, as far as you know, you're not asserting or believe there's any privilege as to those documents. Is that correct?
Well, I haven't reviewed the however many million documents that...
I'm only saying that you, at this time you know of no privilege.
I'm not aware of it, but I really haven't asked the question yet, to be honest.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then lastly, since in the case of Peter Strzok and other statements, because this information was not made available to us at a time in which your predecessor, Mr. Comey, specifically said he was breaking precedent and being open and transparent as to the investigation of Hillary Clinton's taking from government possession documents under the Federal Records Act and classified documents. Do you agree that a de novo review at some point by someone is clearly warranted as to whether or not the decision not to prosecute was appropriate?
Well, Congressman, I think what I would say to that is there is what I would consider a de novo outside independent review by the Inspector General into whether or not decisions made, including charging or not charging decisions in the matter that you're referring to, were based on any kind of improper considerations or political considerations. And depending on what the Inspector General finds, there could be any range of possible steps that we or others would have to take in response to those findings.
So it's not a de novo review by the Inspector General, but a review of whether or not impropriety occurred, and as such, a de novo review of that decision not to prosecute Hillary Clinton would be the question.
The time of the gentleman has expired.
I think
The director may answer the question.
Yeah, I think I can briefly respond, which is, I think of the Inspector General's investigation as de novo in one sense, which is that it's objective, arm's length, no skin in the game, if you will. But you're right that the Inspector General is not second-guessing prosecutorial decisions and things like that. However, the Inspector General is looking at the very important question of whether or not improper political considerations factored into the decision-making. If he were to conclude that that's what happened, then I think at that point we're in a situation where we have to assess what else might need to be done to unring that bell, if you will.
Thank you. I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, for 5 minutes.
Weasel News.
I thank the chairman. I welcome you, Director, and I thank you for your service. I'm holding in my hand right now the mission of the FBI, which reads, the mission of the FBI is to protect and defend the United States against terrorists and foreign intelligence threats, to uphold and enforce the criminal laws of the United States, and to provide leadership and criminal justice services to federal, state, municipal, and international agencies and partners, and to perform these responsibilities in a manner that is responsive to the needs of the public and is faithful to the Constitution of the United States. Do you adhere to that mission?
Yes, ma'am.
Does that mission include your responding to the political bias and comments of politicians?
I do not think it is part of my responsibility to respond to opinions and biases, if there are out there, by politicians.
And forgive me for the time period that I have. If Director Comey made a statement that there would be no prosecution against the former Secretary of State, would that statement have been reviewed by the Department of Justice?
Well, Congressman, I think that that whole decision making was handled is part of what the Inspector General is looking at.
Is that the protocol? You indicated that you report to the Deputy Attorney General, he reports to the Attorney General. And so, in the normal protocol, a statement that you would have made, or any other FBI director would have made, Director Mueller, when he was the FBI director, reviewed by that protocol? Is that the likely protocol?
Likely protocol, sure.
Let me move on to indicate that it was stated earlier that the FBI, that the former secretary disclosed top secrets into emails, whether that, and asked the question whether that should be investigated. The present president disclosed top secret classified information to Russian ambassador and foreign minister in the Oval Office. Is the FBI investigating those disclosures?
Congressman, I wouldn't confirm or suggest the existence of any ongoing investigation.
Just a few years ago, this committee considered and eventually moved on a obstruction of justice element in an impeachment proceeding. Do you believe, yes or no, can a sitting president commit obstruction of justice?
Congressman, legal questions, especially legal questions regarding impeachment, are not something that I'm equipped to answer in this setting as an FBI director.
This is separate and apart from impeachment. Do you believe that a sitting president can commit an obstruction of justice?
That also is a legal question, and I would defer to the lawyers on that one. I'm a now reformed lawyer as an FBI
I understand.
director.
Is it your opinion that if a sitting president commits a crime, then it becomes a non-crime?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
If a sitting president commits a crime, does it become a non-crime?
Same answer.
Let me move on to the idea of the quote from the President of the United States. And do you believe that the FBI's reputation is in tatters? What impact did that have on the FBI? And if you would move quickly, I know you gave a long assessment, but what impact would that have on the FBI if that is a statement made nationally and also to the world, that the FBI is in tatters?
Congresswoman, the agents, analysts, and staff of the FBI are big boys and girls. We understand that we will take criticism from all corners, and we're accustomed to that. I believe, personally, based on what I've seen, that our reputation with our counterparts in law enforcement, federal, state, and local, our counterparts in the intelligence community, our counterparts around the world, the communities that we serve, the victims that we protect, the judges we appear before, the scientists we interact with in the laboratory services space, for example. My experience has been that our reputation is quite good.
Thank you very much. I want to be assured to the American people that Andrew Weissman and Peter Strzok, who were removed from their posts, that will not sabotage Bob Mueller's investigation to Trump campaign's collusion with Russia. Their removal.
I'm sorry,
That their removal, Peter Strzok and Mr. Weissman, will not sabotage Mueller's investigation into Russian collusion. Their removal from the investigation.
I'm not aware of any effort by anyone to sabotage or less even Special Counsel Mueller's investigation.
Let me ask the question on the black identity extremists. you indicated, or we have had some conversations. Let me indicate to you that a report that was done August 14, 2017, said that during the same period of this report, they found that right-wing extremists were behind nearly twice as many incidents, 115, and just over a third of these incidents were foiled than those who might be considered Islamists or might be considered others. There is a black extremist identity report. Again, I asked the question, would you see that report be clarified, and would you take note of the fact that the convictions dealing with violence are more for looking for my chart, are more dealing with Islamists and left wing and less for right wing. So right wing extremists are not being prosecuted. Black identity extremists, as declared by the FBI, are in fact subjected to a report, and if I might say, a FBI that is not diverse, that I know that we'd like to work on to make it diverse, but they are not being prosecuted the way right wing. Right wing has the lowest amount of prosecutions in the United States. Percent of domestic terror incidents involving federal prosecution, the right wing is the lowest. The left wing is prosecuted 100%. Can you explain that?
The time of the gentleman has expired. The director's permitted to answer the question.
Congresswoman, I'd have to look at the statistics that you saw. I can tell you that we have in our domestic terrorism program, that the last time I looked, we have about 50% more white supremacist, what the category that we would call white supremacist investigations than we do in the black identity extremist category. The other point I would make is that in all of these contexts, in the domestic terrorism arena, that we only investigate if there are three things. One, federal criminal activity, credible evidence of a federal crime. Two, credible information suggesting an attempt to use force or violence. And three, those things in furtherance of a political or social goal. We don't have that. We don't investigate. Doesn't matter whether right wing, left wing, or any other wing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like a report back on that question, please. Thank you very much.
The gentleman from Iowa, Mr. King, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director, for your testimony here today and your service to our country. A number of curiosities I come here with this morning, as all of us do, and one of them is that in the FBI interview and investigation of General Flynn, are there
Number one, I don't know, but beyond that, I would general into the handling of the prior matter. And based on that, I will look at all available remedies, depending on what the facts are when they are found. As to the access to the dossier, that's something that is subject to ongoing discussion between my staff and the various intelligence committees.
There's nothing prohibiting you, Director. Is there anything prohibiting you from showing this committee what was presented to the FISA court? The application you all put together at the FBI that was presented to the FISA court. Is there anything preventing you from showing us that?
The time of the gentleman has expired. The director can respond.
I do not believe that I can legally and appropriately share a FISA court submission with this committee.
I'm talking about what the FBI put together, not what the court had. What you took there. What was the process put together? What you presented? What you took to the court?
When I sign FISA applications, which I have to do almost every day of the week, they are all covered with a classified information cover. So that's part of why.
Director, is it likely that Peter Strzok played a part in the application presented to the FISA court?
The gentleman's time has expired. However, I do want to follow up on your last response to the gentleman. This committee, the House Judiciary Committee, has primary jurisdiction over the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. So any request for documents coming to any part of the Congress should include the House Judiciary Committee. And if it is classified in any way, shape, or form, it can be provided to us in a classified setting. But that is information that we are very much interested in. Very much want to receive.
The question to the Chairman. I don't think there's anything prohibiting the FBI from giving us what they used to put together what was taken to the FISA court. That's what we're asking for, and there is nothing prohibiting him from doing that.
I don't think there is either. Time the gentleman has expired, however. Care to respond to that? Director Ray?
No, I think I've covered.
as a litigation partner at the international and premier law firm of King and Spalding. You headed up the Special Matters and Government Investigations Practice Group, which involved sophisticated government investigatory matters and involving your clients, and also you even represented Governor Christie during the Bridgegate scandal, successfully, I presume, at this point. So you've had a long career in criminal law and in matters involving government, and I find it hard to believe that you have not pondered the question of whether or not a president can be guilty of obstruction of justice. You have pondered that question, have you not?
To be honest, and then lastly, since in the case of Peter Strzok and other statements, because this information was not made available to us at a time in which your predecessor, Mr. Comey, specifically said he was breaking precedent and being open and transparent as to the investigation of Hillary Clinton's taking from government possession documents under the Federal Records Act and classified documents. Do you agree that a de novo review at some point by someone is clearly warranted as to whether or not the decision not to prosecute was appropriate?
Well, Congressman, I think what I would say to that is there is what I would consider a de novo outside independent bureau, when frankly it was pretty damn lonely to do so. When my Democrat friends were asking that Jim Comey be prosecuted for a Hatch Act violation about this time last year. They now want him canonized, but this time last year they wanted him prosecuted for a Hatch Act violation. When your predecessor sat right where you're sitting, it was embroiled.
They might mainly work government contracts, but that doesn't make Merriweather Security even nearly the good guys. Not like us. You've got the green light to resupply with some railguns they've got at Humane Labs. Take what you can and go back to the base.
The women and men of the Department of Justice and the Bureau, the professionals that we hired to do their job. And the vast majority of line prosecutors and line agents are exactly what you described in your opening statement. They are exactly what you described. But unfortunately, the last 2 years have not been good years for the Bureau, and they have not been good years for the department. We had an Attorney General meet with the spouse of a target of an investigation on the tarmac and asked that an investigation be
some music? I can get some wine too.
Wine? Alcoholic beverage derived from grapes, meant to depress the central nervous system and induce a short-term euphoria.
Yeah, something like that.
Yummy. Your sex was excellent, Kevin Moore.
Try. I mean, your sex was, wow, so good. It was amazing.
I'm gonna miss you. And your sex.
I miss you too.
I wish you could come with me. It's a beautiful place. I know you would like it very much.
Sure, we do.
Maybe I could come back and visit.
Yes, I love that.
Then I will make it so.
Great. It's going to work. It's going to work. Just a few more adjustments. T minus 5 minutes. So get any gospel inflation when you inside.
That's an excellent idea.
Oh, no, you don't. You really don't have to.
Do you not like the way I perform inflation?
Oh, no, it's not that. I think 3 times in a car was quite compromise efficient on the soul. You guys really like your sex.
Don't have anything like it. It really is quite pleasurable.
Yeah, we kind of like it too. The ship is operational. We can leave at any time. Doctor, if it's a pleasure meeting you, thank you so much for bringing Luna to me. Without her and her ship, I would have been stuck here for the rest of my days. Well, you're very welcome. All right, my dear, we must go. We have a long journey ahead of us. Shake that ass.
Why do I have to shake my...
It's just a figure of speech. He just wants to know.
Oh. Well, I guess this is time for us to say our goodbyes. I brought something for you to remember me by.
Oh, thanks.
Every time you smell this, think of me. Travel safe.
Yes, sir.
Hey there.
Freedom comes hot from the barrel, yes, sir. That is a wholesome day's fun taken care of. Fine.
To the bay with me. Hey, she want a young nigga to hit it fast. Give the cash, I can give you what you ask. Hit it from the back, make you say your nigga name. Damn shit changed when you really in the game. She want a heartbreaker, somebody who can take her like all around the world of this independent paper. Like wait, hold up, put your hands on. You deal with them, you deal with me, you see we hands on. And I still might hit it in the bathroom. And ain't no telling, if I smell it, let me inhale it. I'ma kill it, I'ma nail it. It's a boat I'm selling, I need rope, hold pellet. I be going to work, be low, come and tell them. You got me so off balance, tell me how you manage to throw me off, falling. And I can't get up, listen, my body's calling. Come break me off, baby, turn me up. You got me shook up, shut down, shook up for your loving. Oh, baby, I'm burning up. You got me sweating, swear I'm feeling your persona. You make me wanna
Let me... It's on the way. Okay, I got stuff to do.
I'ma blow your mind to get out on the floor like that, like that. All in the front, all in the back, just like that, like that. I'ma blow your mind like that.
Niggas rap rich, but I've been broke. Last night I had a dream about a kick dope. I used to cross state lines just to get dope. Wanna press my line, got a bitch for it. I'm all alone in the crowd, don't touch me. Smoking, I'm frustrated. Lie to my girl when she bring it up much later. Nah, I ain't a hoe, I just crush a lot. Boss off, re-rock till I whip the watch. Musta hit me from the yacht, drunk, laughing at chop. They said it's grind time, a gang of niggas want your spot. Look, a gang of these new niggas won't be popped. That's why a gang of these little niggas gon' get shot. It's on the grow up. Niggas ain't fucking with you, so what? Sit your ass down, get your dough up. I don't never judge with my nose up. I'ma blow up. Ooh, about money on that note. Bitch, I 100 to the point you get taxed for it. If I ever need your hand, I ask for it. Until then, I'ma be on my shit like, ooh. I'ma get rich on you. I'ma be richer than you. I'ma get rich like, I'ma get rich on you. I'ma be richer than you.
We taking hotties to the crib tonight. Guarantee we gon' get up in the rib tonight. Bass make it hot, thugs make it hot. Bass make it hot, make it hot. Bass make it hot, thugs make it hot.
I just wanna taste your peanut butter jelly while I'm feeling on your body, yaddy, yaddy. Oh, your body, yaddy, yaddy. While I'm feeling on your body, yaddy, yaddy. Oh, she wally, wally, wally. You looking dangerous. I want you inside me, up. We could be making crazy love. Whole world gon' be hating us. Why they hate? Cause I'm feeling on your body, yaddy, yaddy. Oh, your body, yaddy, yaddy. Cause I'm feeling on your body, yaddy, yaddy. Oh, she wally, wally, wally.
Don't you wanna let me go and get a start? Looking like a mullet dressed in a bottle. Everything I do, it got gold on it. I just ate a $300 hamburger change over. Tell the lane that the game over. And the shoe rain, fake rain, cost a brain for do my thing for the booty chain and the shoe match. Superman grabbing Lois Lane on the booty. I told you from the jump, don't jump to conclusion. If you wanna tell, put some sand on your booty. Don't used to have a pad, I'm a man on the booty till I cover this up. Put my hand on the
Pull
booty.
up on your body, yaddy, yaddy. Oh, your body, yaddy, yaddy. Let me pull up on your body, yaddy, yaddy. Oh, she wally, wally, wally. You looking dangerous. I want you inside me, we could be making crazy love. Whole world gon' be hating us.
Baby girl, you're so damn fine though. I'm trying to know if I can hit it from behind though. I'm sipping on you like some fine wine though. And when it's over, I press rewind though. Hey, you talking bands, girl, I got it. Benjamin's all in my pocket. I traded in my shoes for some robbers. Playing Batman, Fendi's for robber. Hey, I got a Glock in my Rari. Hey, 17 shots, no 38. I got a Glock in my Rari. 17 shots, no 38. And she's mine. Wonder when she'll be mine. She walk fast like Paris, rewind to see that I one more time. And I got this soda. But me boys ain't know us. All fast money, they slow us. No one can control us.
Tell me what you see. Is it money or it's me? I smoke 20s, mellow. I got honeys in my beat. Feel like Monty, can you be my baby daddy? I'm like, yeah. I got robins on my jeans. You see the wings on every pair. All you see is Remy boys. You know my everywhere. If somebody got a problem, we could meet up anywhere. Never say some. Don't you play dumb. You know where we came from. You don't want sauce, no A1.
Hold on to a long time.
Yeah, did some movies and started missing this rap. Back to rap and started missing them movies. Left these to settle down with just one chick. Get with one chick, started missing them groupies. Stopped drinking for a year and I was all sober. Next year I got drunk and did it all over. Yesterday I quit smoking and swore I had enough. Till I smelt it in the club and had to take a puff. I got rich, learned life was a now everybody's after all of my ends. When I was broke, all love from my folks, but nowadays I'm losing all of my friends. Let the story begin. The grass is always greener on the other side. Always searching for another height. The grass is always greener on the other side. Caterpillar to a butterfly. The grass is always greener on the other side. Always searching for another height. The grass is always greener on the other side. Caterpillar to a butterfly. Start exercising and went and got me a six-pack. Was eating healthy and did away with the junk. Then I got lazy and started to want to kick back. My six-pack reverted back to a good. When I'm at the crib, I'm mad I'm not at the club. When I'm at the club, I'm mad I'm not at the crib. I used to be out partying every damn night. Now sometimes I'd rather be with my kids. I got checks, gained a lot of respect. Now everywhere I go, they holler my name. But sometimes wish that I was disguised for peace of mind over fortune and fame. Guess what I'm really saying? The grass is always greener on the other side. Always searching for another height. The grass is always greener on the other side. Caterpillar to a butterfly. The grass is always greener on the other side.
my name in a minute. Let me free by sweat. I promise I'll keep your body tripping. Oh, I'm sorry. Niggas mad cause I came to the party. Like, oh. We took a girl to the club and now she gone. Now she asking me to take her home. Told her let's go, long as you know, cause I know when we get along. I'm touching you tonight, I'm loving you tonight. No, I'm fucking you, girl. You must be used to spending, putting in that time. Touching, loving, fucking, can't make up my mind.
My name, calling all night. I can pull a wool while I'm being polite. Darling, calling all night. I can be a fool while I'm being polite. Hold me all night. I know many women wanna be in my life. Hold me all night. Like every woman wanna be in my life. Even if she groovy, even if she groovy, even if she groovy, even if she groovy. I'm a classic man. You can be me when you look clean. I'm a classic man. Calling on me like a young OG. I'm a classic man. Your knees get made by the street. Old fashioned man. Yeah, baby, I'm a classic man. Classic man. Yeah, baby, I'm a classic man. I'm a classic man. I'm a classic man. Classic man. I'm a classic man. Classic man. Burn through the hood like wool. When everybody feeling so cool. I cool like that King Cool. And get a bit of my glow. Yeah, charm, I can love a charm. Yeah, y'all put me with the rum, mama. GP like a drum, mama. And we don't live by the law, mama. Even if she go away, even if she go away, even if she go away, even if she go away. I'm a classic man. You can be me when you look clean. I'm a classic man. Calling on me like a young OG. I'm a classic man. Your knees get made by the street. Old fashioned man. Yeah, baby, I'm a classic man. I'm a classic man. I'm a classic man. Classic man. Classic man. Classic man.
that's all you get, like Street Fighter. Nah, walk with me, yeah, talk with me. That body cold, just game like a pond to me. She wanna vibe with me, she wanna vibe with me. I got that long clip on the street with the move. I'm fucking good, hard to get room. Cool, no top, yeah, I took off the roof. I'm high, you say I'm missing, I might just be right with my big nigga. Cocaine, right nigga, getting right nigga. I'ma knock the pussy out, fight right nigga. I'ma light it up, push it to the right nigga. All bitches at the crib, don't invite niggas. That's good. No hood rats. Yeah, we see that they booty, you know your bitch, but she want love from me, nigga, that's a heart.